There we go. So it looks like we are connected to all channels. This is the first time I've connected to all channels and haven't gotten an error message. So go technology.
It's a good omen for today.
Yeah, right. Um, it's just funny how I don't know. Tech helps us so much. It helps us do so many things faster. But when it goes wrong, you can spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to do this tiny little thing. And if you just went back to like pen and pencil or pen and paper, you'd be,
Absolutely.
you know, you'd probably be ahead in that moment. But anyway, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. In the old days, which was a few years ago, the payroll person was, you wanted to be best friends with the payroll person because you didn't want anything to go wrong with your payroll. Now it's the IT person.
Yeah, and it's actually really interesting. Like I'm in marketing, but because my passion really is communications, it kind of spans a bunch of things. It spans leadership, strategy for a business, HR. And one thing I've done a lot of work in IT, and one thing that I've noticed in IT is maybe like I don't know when the shift happened, but maybe like 10 years ago, let's say, IT drove the decisions and HR and marketing had to work with what IT said you could have. And now I find HR and marketing are saying to IT, I need you to make this work. It's like really switched the decision making because almost anything's possible now. And you need the functionalities, you know.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're getting smarter too. We know what we want,
Yeah,
and and
true.
we need those programmers to make it happen.
Yeah, it's true. So just a quick shout out to folks. It is 2 minutes to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, Friday, in what is about to like leading into what is a long weekend in Canada. We have Thanksgiving on Monday. We are kicking off in a couple minutes our third live stream. So we've been doing these every week at 2 p.m. Eastern. Our third live stream. And today we're tackling a really very timely topic about pandemic planning. We're going to get all into the ins and outs of that. But we're waiting to that 2 o'clock time. We log in a bit early so that hopefully you folks get a chance to see your notification on your phone and such and come and join us on time. I'm just checking my internet because it is giving me ugly an ugly fan. I want a full fan, and I'm seeing I'm down one bar. That bothers me, but I think I'm still okay. Do you see any stuttering when I talk, Paula? Is it coming out okay?
No, no, you're fine.
Okay, good. I don't really know what those meters mean. Sometimes I'll have like one little tiny bar and it still works fine. So who knows?
Oh, I used to spend, I mean, some of the ridiculous situations I found myself in trying to get the Wi-Fi in my house.
Yeah,
I have been crouched down in the corner of my laundry room because that was the best spot I could get the bars.
yeah.
Trying to have a professional conversation with someone. I have been, in one spot in my basement. I don't know. For some reason, the Wi-Fi seems to float around my house sometimes.
Yeah, I hear you. I also think since COVID hit, we've all become more forgiving about backgrounds and just like the logistics of it all. Uh, I often felt before COVID, I often felt like um, I couldn't do video if I didn't have the right background, if everything wasn't just right. And so having a simple meeting or doing something like this would actually take 3 or 4 hours to make sure that, the hair, the makeup, the clothing, the background, the lighting, all of that. But we're all human beings just doing our best, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so I believe it is 2 o'clock now. It is on my clock. Hello, everyone. Anyone that's joining us, really appreciate having you here. I'm Juliana. I am head of marketing at Payment Evolution. I'm here today with Paula Tidsbury. Am I saying your last name right?
You are. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Paula is part of our HX team. HX is Payment Evolution's spin on HR. Essentially, we focus on the human experience, not humans as a resource. And so we're really, really proud of that. And we're going to dig into one area of HX that we're we know is timely today, pandemic planning. We're going to take a little bit of a casual approach because again, we're humans, and and it's good ultimately to make sure that we've got you all covered. And so for that reason, I've got some notes. You might see me glance to the side a couple times. I've got some notes. I want to make sure that I've covered all of our hot topics, and I might take notes as we go. And if you ever see me glance down, it's because in an emergency, I might get a notification from someone on our team saying, "Oh, that message broke up. Can you say it again?" or something. So I'm not distracted by other things. I'm all in here. But I just wanted you to know that. So Paula, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is a new experience for me. So it's both exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time.
Yeah, I bet. Have you tuned into other live streams?
No, I haven't. I've been doing a lot of webinars, much like a large population of people have been doing lately. And I've made the decision not to do any webinars anymore. So I think this is, I might be looking for more things like what we're doing today.
Yeah, awesome. I really like this. At PayEvo, we do webinars. We have a podcast that we just launched our first episode this week, actually, and we're doing live streams as well, and for a few different reasons. Like I think people like different kinds of topics across different mediums, but also there are some things that are really just conducive to a conversation, unless you're talking about unless you're talking about a specific business. Preparing a webinar on something like pandemic planning would end up being sort of general, I think, in some senses, whereas the conversation kind of allows us to talk about some of the nuances so that businesses can get an idea, I think, of how this can be unique to their business. Is that fair, or am I wrong about that assumption?
No, I think it's fair. I find that people, myself with a webinar, I tune in and out. Because I'm not seeing a face, I'm watching a PowerPoint presentation. It's just so classroom.
Yes.
Where this, we hope to be engaging. We hope seeing the person, seeing their expressions, and we hope it's a more personalized experience for people. And I do like the conversation because I think if you're being lectured, which is a webinar style, the information you will only retain maybe 5% of that information. When it's more conversational, I think people will remember more.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but like one of the things I really missed during COVID is in an office, you kind of pick things up with osmosis because everyone's just kind of around talking about things, dealing with things. And you might not even realize you're listening to something. And when there's that cue for you that like, ooh, I need to know about that, you can drop in, So it's kind of like unintentional eavesdropping. But I think this kind of approach gives people the ability to listen in and tune in more intently when it hits a button for them.
That's right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so when I first started us off a couple minutes ago, I introduced you as part of our human experience team, and I gave like a little one-liner about why we say human experience as opposed to human resources. But I'd like to hear a little bit about that from you. You are an HR professional. You could work in HR anywhere. What is HX? Why are you working with an HX team? What's that angle, and what's that angle for you?
Well, I've been consulting for quite a number of years, so I'm very familiar with the HR consulting platform, as you say, and there's a lot of consulting firms out there. What I liked about HX is it's in the title, the human experience. So, yes, human resources, are we doing compensation plans, performance management, and policies? But HX as the human experience, we're we are looking at all those things, but we're looking at in terms of, the company being an organism, and you've got all of these different people that are feeding into that organization or that organism. And we want to make sure that all the organisms are happy. And what we do is, keeping that in mind, we want to work with business owners, and we want to implement programs and a support system for them so that we can take on some of these sort of headaches, rather, that maybe not headaches isn't the right word, but sort of the issues that they don't have time to deal with. So we can give them ways that they can ease the burden of their day, so that they can focus on other things of the business. If everyone is happy, the whole organism is happy.
Yeah, I really love that, and it's a bit of a slight shift for me in the way that I've thought of HX. I haven't actually put this thought together in my head before, but human resources really suggests this idea of a business extracting a resource, from humans ultimately, whereas human experience suggests that we're actually all giving to a cause. Like even the individuals, we're not as employees a resource to be extracted from. We are actually part of that machine, part of that organism. I really like that a lot. It has parallels for me to the environment. Rather than extracting resources, if we can work with it, it will treat us good too, right? So
it's a real symbiotic relationship. We all have a goal, and we all need to work towards that same goal, and each of us gives and takes from each other.
Yes. Yeah. No, I really appreciate that. Thank you for putting your touch on that for me. So tell me about you. You did that a little bit. You told me about the fact that you've been doing this for a while now. I know that your area of specialty, or at least I believe your area of specialty, is around policies, implementation, and that sort of thing. Why that area? What is your niche? What do you bring uniquely?
I don't know if that would. What is my niche? Well, my niche, I don't have a niche industry. I like all industries. The reason I consult is because I can get my nose in a lot of different things, and I can do a lot of different things in a day. So I'm not just stuck in the manufacturing industry, where it's like, some of the problems are very repetitive in manufacturing that you wouldn't necessarily find in a technology industry. That you wouldn't necessarily find in a hospitality industry. So I think, it's just it allows me to really kind of stretch. So that's why I don't have a niche industry. If I break it down, my niche would be small to mid-sized businesses. I love that environment. I love the entrepreneurial spirit of them. I love the flexibility. And I love the adaptability as well. That you don't find that in more of a corporate environment. Now, there's good and bad in both, obviously, but I just find I'm better suited to the small to mid-size businesses. So if I kind of get that down a little bit further, I do enjoy policy. My niche. Well, we'll call policy my niche. I do like strategizing. I like picking apart things and getting rid of all the garbage and the extra stuff that's time consuming with no value, and focusing on the value items.
That's awesome. There are so many little nuggets of what you've said that I want to dive into, and I'm going to try and maybe put a pin in some of them, because I want to get into the topic of pandemic planning. I think so. Pandemic planning it's kind of interesting, because I think that it spans a couple of things that you talked about, policy and strategy. It's sort of like, if you have a strategy, and then the strategy is sort of the overarching thing. The policy is logistics tactical piece that makes the rest run smoothly. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think the policy is one part of the strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you wrote the pandemic planning toolkits that Payment Evolution has is like literally releasing today, announcing today. I do believe we had another version of it, but in terms of the version that we've got right now, I believe you are the author, correct?
Mhm. Yeah, I am.
How elaborate of a process was that for you? Like, I'm imagining businesses without a toolkit have to kind of start from scratch and think of so many different things. So when you're doing that as a toolkit, regardless of the individual company implementations, um, like, did this touch many areas of most businesses, or is this something that's pretty streamlined and easy, or not easy to implement, but streamlined to implement? Is it kind of a narrow focus, or does it touch multiple areas of the business?
It definitely touches multiple areas of a business, and really, it's not industry specific either.
Yeah.
One industry might have some additions. Another industry might have some different additions. But I think the core of the pandemic tool that I've provided, or that HX has provided, rather, everyone can use, and everyone will be implementing all of those steps.
Mhm. Okay, so I'm curious how you like how would you define what is a pandemic planning toolkit? But before, because that's a really big question, I want to kind of parse it out a little, and I'm wondering, without the pandemic planning toolkit, without an HR expert to tell you that you need to do this, is this something that is part of business operations anyway? Is like, will some businesses find that they're doing it without even knowing, or is this really something that is like expert and removed? You need the whole toolkit in order to do it properly.
I think intuitively some of these things will already be done. If
So, what's
there's
an
a
example of one that a business might do intuitively?
um, uh, health protocols. There's a pandemic. It's been blasted everywhere. You need to wear masks. You need to hand sanitize. So they're going to know. They don't need to be told from a pandemic plan that these things need to happen.
Yep.
That they need to source out these items. They need to provide these items. If people need to remain 6 or 2 meters apart, they will probably figure these things out.
Yep.
It's more, so the toolkit, I would say, it talks about all those things, obviously. You
Yeah.
need to talk about them, but there's a lot of little things that people might not intuitively do. Like, and it sort of houses all those checkpoints so
Yes.
that instead of one person having it all up in their head, many people can read the document and no one is going to forget what needs to be done.
Yes. Okay. So that's perfect. And I want to get into what some of the topics are within the pandemic planning toolkit. But given that some of these things will be intuitively implemented by businesses just in the course of daily business, why should businesses care about this pandemic planning toolkit now?
Um, It's really critical right now because part of the process of the pandemic toolkit is to assign tasks to people. Because
Mhm.
again, one person can't have everything in their head and one person can't be responsible for everything. So it allows you to assign different things to different people. So whether it's the HR person, the office manager, the joint health safety committee members, part of the leadership team, managers, a variety of different people. It's just you've got point people that know I'm responsible for this part.
Yes.
This person's responsible for that part, and then it kind of flows nicely. There is so much happening right now. There are so many different pieces of legislation. There's amendments. In the last 3 weeks, there were 2 amendments made to
Crazy.
the rules for the stage 3 opening. So to expect somebody to keep on top of all that is I think it's setting unrealistic expectations.
For sure.
I mean, I myself, I've been keeping my clients up to date, and I keep blasting them with emails. Hey, FYI, you know what we discussed like 2 weeks ago with the amendment. Well, guess what? There's been a new revised amendment, and these are the new steps you have to take. So
Yeah.
I think not only does the plan kind of house that, and it forces you to write down your policies.
Hmm. Yeah. Codifying things, writing them down is so important, right? It seems like such an obvious thing to do, but it's almost so obvious that you can easily forget, and you might even be implementing a strategy effectively for a couple weeks, and then it kind of falls off the radar and people stop doing it. So that makes a lot of sense to me. We have one question. Alif is talking about, or has asked, why should I be worried about COVID-19 wave 2? Um, with regards to this pandemic planning toolkit, I think you've already mentioned, that with different stages, there are different stages of implementation of government policy. But we also have this wave 2 coming. So, is it possible that businesses are already set from wave 1? Or is this relevant in a new way now?
I would say that businesses have already weathered the first wave items.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And I think, the second wave, you're still going to be doing all the things you did for the first wave. Absolutely. You can't stop that. But I think there's a shift in what you need to do. So second wave is all about reflecting. Let's look back,
Hmm.
unfortunately, on the last 8 months. Can you believe it's been 8 months already?
It's
Um,
crazy, actually. That wave 1 really had such a lengthy amount of time. Mhm.
it did. So look back, you've had 8 months to kind of iron out all your little kinks. What did work? What isn't working, or what can be improved upon. Because I think you need to do that in order to get through the second wave. And there's some, so the the mechanics would have been worked out in the first wave, but I think the second wave you're going to have some different issues. And I think it's all going to be about employee engagement,
Mm.
employees' health and well-being, um, and really engagement,
Yeah.
because it has been a long 8 months. And
Yes.
I don't think any of us know how long the second wave is going to be.
Yeah. I think that's really fair. I think, if you think about engagement, it's such a almost nebulous topic versus something like, health protocols. We all wear masks in the office, right? Like that one's obvious. Something like engagement could easily fall off your radar. So if I were to open this pandemic planning toolkit right now, it's a paper document. I open it up. Um, what can I expect here? Is it a how-to document? Do we have all of the topics sort of parsed out? What can I expect as a small business owner going into the pandemic planning toolkit?
Well, what we tried to do at HX is, you can get pandemic plans that are 60 pages long. Is that necessary for everybody? And do you really want to spend, 3 weeks reading on how to do the plan before you start implementing something? So we really tried to, again, take out the stuff that isn't necessary and just really focus on the actionable items right then and there. So the plan itself, it has health protocols. It talks about, it's how to communicate to your employees, how to keep your employees safe. So we've got a sample policy in there, outlining, the different scenarios that you could encounter, because there's a lot of things to think about when you're doing a policy as well. We can just say, yeah, here's your COVID policy. But guess what? There's COVID policy, but each company needs to decide, beyond the standard statements of, we're going to give you the correct PPE, we need you to wash your hands, you have to wear your mask. But there's other things that the employees need to know as well, like what to do if they come in contact with someone.
Yes.
What to do if they have symptoms. What to do if for childcare issues and they can't come into work. So they need to know how all these things are interconnected. So we've talked about things like, if you don't have paid sick days, you might want to think about implementing some. Certainly don't need to, but it's more like the FYIs. Have you thought about A, B, C, D, or E? And we're giving all the options that people could choose. You don't have to choose any of them, but you should probably be prepared to address some of these items because your employees are going to ask these questions. And you don't want a business owner to be unprepared for the question.
Yeah. So you and I actually talked about that. I asked for a bit of advice for a friend of mine who's a leader in a small organization, who essentially was having these issues pop up, kind of popcorn style, with various employees, and it became a, create a solution based on the ask. And we talked about consistency and how do you keep it consistent across the board. So I kind of see that as a dichotomy of reacting versus planning, right? And what are some of the consequences? This is actually aligning with a question from YouTube, I believe, about some of the failures in adapting for COVID on time. And I think one of them might be inconsistent rules across staff. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, I think there's dangers to being inconsistent for sure. These are unprecedented times, though. There's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of trust on both sides right now. So you have to find that line where you're setting a rule, but you almost have to have a parameter of flexibility around that rule as well. So it is very, very tough. I've had, everyone's got a different scenario. Everybody's got, the first 9 items are exactly the same from employee A and B, except that 10th item is different. Well, does that 10th item, is it enough to make you change the rule? Should you change the rule? And if you do change the rule, what's the other employee going to say? So those are all the things that you have to say. And I think it's really hard right now because you have to follow the law. So you have to follow the law, but you also want to show a level of compassion. But you also have to, make sure that your business survives. Because it's not just one employee that you're thinking about. There's a lot of employees, and it's your own livelihood as well. And I think, business owners are struggling right now. How do we check off all those boxes? And to try to be consistent, set a rule, and then discuss all the possible outcomes of that rule. And then stick to an answer. Only in extreme cases should you change your responses.
I really appreciate that you called out the exceptions, because there will be a need for exceptions based on various circumstances, because I think it's impossible for one policy to cover every single situation, right? Like you're saying. But this is what we're talking about here, is really the difference in terms of leading by exception, where everything's an exception, versus having a standard and making exceptions in a very intentional way, where it makes sense, where the policy isn't meeting the need. Yeah, I think that's an important nuance for business leaders. This isn't a cookie cutter. This is a benchmark, right? It gives you, it's essentially a tool that allows you to respond consistently where appropriate, and adapt where appropriate, but intentionally, not because someone was a little louder than the other coworker who was, a little more, wasn't willing to ask for the exception or whatever. So I think that benchmark piece helps me understand why this toolkit is more than just a policy, like you said.
And actually, Juliana, that just resonated with me, what you just said. Employees they may not like your answer, but they will respect an answer that is based on logic and law.
Mm-hmm.
They have a harder time accepting when they can see through all the smoke and mirrors and they realize that it's just because so and so yelled louder than they did.
Yes. Yes.
So hey, it's terrible times right now. A lot of companies are just working off the fly and trying to get through the day.
Mm-hmm.
Completely understand that. And I think a lot of employees are just are accepting that. And I think both parties are accepting that things will be changed. So the policy that happened today might change next week.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Because literally the laws are right.
Literally. I mean,
Mhm.
a few weeks ago, we were ready to have a blog out there and remind everybody of this, the new timelines for the layoffs. And like, bam, just before we were going to press the button, new legislation came out.
Yeah.
So, how does one person keep on top of all this? One person can't. And that's why a team is always nice.
Yeah, and that really goes to the core of what we're doing here at Payment Evolution. We're essentially trying to bring might in areas outside of a business owner's expertise to their disposal. You do what you do, and you're great at it. And sometimes you need you need an HR manager for 3 days. You know what I mean? So yeah, trying to bring some of that expertise. You mentioned earlier, this was one of those things that kind of put a pin in. You mentioned earlier, you said the word. You talked about manufacturing and you said, the problems in manufacturing might be different than problems in another industry. And you also talked about how HR is really about trying to manage some of the headaches. And it's interesting because everyone's going to define that differently, right? For some
Absolutely.
people, a headache or a problem is going to be something that has actually escalated. But for a lot of business owners who are passionate about what they do, and they don't want to stop, they don't want to stop cooking the meal or crafting the furniture, whatever it is they're passionate about, really any of the logistics can be a headache, right? So
Yeah.
I kind of feel like, I don't know, this planning toolkit is I think a great turnkey way to spend as little time as possible on the headaches, however you might define them, which is kind of cool.
Well, we've tried to draft out as much as we could, and in my previous life, I was a copy editor. So
Ooh.
yeah. So
Sorry, no, I'm actually I started out my career writing and editing, and I have like a bizarre interest in that. So I'm
well,
not making fun.
so I learned really quickly that it was much easier to dissect and rip apart somebody else's work and make it great
Mm.
than to start from trying to create something from scratch of my own.
Yeah.
So this is my gift.
Yes,
Let's
yes,
call it
yes.
a gift. Slice and dice my work.
Yeah.
Make it yours. But this
Yeah.
gives you the foundation, and you can throw out what you don't like, and you can add in other things that you do like. But it gives you a
Mhm.
foundation, and at HX, we really felt it was a strong starting point for businesses. So
Yeah.
it's not going to take, they only have to put in 30% of their time rather than 70% of their time.
Yeah. Yeah. To get this done for sure.
Yeah.
So earlier I asked a little bit about what are some of the topics in the pandemic planning toolkit, and you mentioned engagement. I
Mhm.
want to delve into that a little bit more because, I think I said engagement sounds a little nebulous versus, wear a mask, use your hand sanitizer, stuff like that. So, what do you mean by engagement? Why does that belong in a pandemic planning document?
Well, I think we've said it. It's been a long 8 months. And I
Mm.
think, our resiliency has changed. We're not quite as happy and peppy
Yeah.
as we were
Yes.
in March as we are now. It's now October.
Mhm.
A lot of people are tired.
Yes.
A lot of people are simply just burnt out because not only are we staying at home trying to do our work, we've got family members staying at home as well. So we've got a lot of, you know, hey, in the good times, you know, trying to work and have a home life and juggling all that was difficult anyway. But now, with all the other pieces, it's exponentially more difficult now.
Yeah.
We've got people, and everyone's got, you know, from the single mom, single dad, you know, families, you know, people who live alone. Um, we've all got our struggles. They're different struggles, but they all come out from people being isolated in their homes, trying to continue and almost pretend that everything's okay. That,
Yes.
yeah, work is going great and my family is really happy and my
Yeah.
personal life is going well. You know, it's not. And a lot of us are struggling with that. And so I think the shift from the second wave, that's the crux of it. You know, we have to keep our employees happy and engaged. It's now a mental health issue, I think,
Sure.
for a lot of people, from you know, depression to burnout. It's a real issue right now.
Yeah. It's interesting how form really does inform function, right? So when we were all working on site, it was, to your point, more compartmentalized. So
Mhm.
now, you know, a leaders, whether you're a people leader, a business owner, an HR manager, um, any of those roles really, or even just a coworker, where your concerns might be more narrow, we're dealing with something bigger here. So, what would you say to a rebuttal to this issue? If someone said, you know, your happiness is not my problem, just do your job, and you know, I shouldn't have to spend time there. What's you know, like engagement and mental health? Some people, maybe people wouldn't say this out loud, but some people might say that's fluff that I don't need to deal with. You know, is it fluff? Does it cost businesses money? You know, what level of importance is something like engagement?
Um, I tend to agree that someone's happiness is not the employer's responsibility. However, their health is.
Hmm.
And I think, you know, health can make someone healthy. So, happy. So if the employer kind of looks at the health aspect, because they're obligated to create a safe and healthy work environment.
Mm,
And I think we always have to remember that.
yes.
You know, they can't help right now. They can't take the kids to school. They can't help you with the online learning for the kids. They can't, you know, they can't allow you to have, you know, 25 family members in your home. You know, an employer can't do that right now. But what they can do is they can check in on their employees. They can ask their employees what they need.
Yeah.
If there's anything that they can do, they can offer suggestions. They can make sure that the employees, um, they can offer tips on, you know, how to make sure that, you know, the work life, isn't, to try and manage the work life, the bleeding of the work life into the family life.
Yeah.
Because right now, you know, there's no 9 to 5 anymore.
Yeah.
It's almost a 24/7.
Yeah.
And so how do our brains, how do we're never switching off one and going into the other. It's like
Yeah.
full on switch 24/7, and it's exhausting. And when
Hmm.
employees are exhausted, they're going to pull back and they're not going to give you their best.
Hmm.
Um, and they're not going to come up with great ideas and
Yeah.
solutions.
Sure. And you know, you use the example of to make sure that the work life doesn't bleed into the personal life, but also vice versa, right?
Mhm.
Because when if there's something that you can do from a employment perspective to make sure that you can compartmentalize as well as possible in this scenario, you're more likely to get dedicated engagement. So, for example, I'm thinking, and I'm not an HR person, but I'm thinking allowing people to kind of shift their schedule around so that they're doing maybe a couple of hours of work once their kids go to bed at 7 p.m. And that's how they prefer to kind of organize their day. That might be an example of how you create a flexible scheduling policy to support higher engagements rather than that 9 to 5 but distracted across the entire time. Is that a decent example?
I think that's an amazing example. Why have someone frustrated, every morning from 9 to 12 because their child is doing online learning and they have to be there because they're young, whatever reason, why have them struggle and only give you 10% of their attention because they're trying to do their work over here, but they're trying to help the child over here? Why have them struggle and be non-productive during that time? Why not allow the employees to be honest with you and say, hey, you know what? I cannot do 9 to 12 Monday to Friday because of this reason.
Yes.
So I'm okay with signing on at 12:31, working till 5 because I have the resources then. And then in the evening, I will ensure that I go in a couple hours in the evening, sign on, and complete my work. If it's feasible, if it works for the organization, I think that's a great way because you know what? That's called compromise. That's supporting each other. And this is where, the symbiotic relationship is.
Yes.
We all have to support each other and we have to acknowledge, as an employee, you have to acknowledge that there are timelines, work needs to be done. As an employer, you have to realize there's some issues right now and some outside forces that are preventing somebody from doing this. But if you offer a workaround, and from both sides, the employer doesn't always have to be the one to come up with the solution. The employee is more than welcome to kind of craft something out and say, okay, this is how I think we can both get what we want at the end of the day.
Yes.
And then that starts the conversation.
So in this way, really, engagement is a strategic way of affecting performance, productivity. Like this really is, there really is a straight line to, the money you're making and the money you're spending on your employees and the money you're making with the work that they're doing. So I like that, that we're able to very practically the relevance of a pandemic planning toolkit, whether you believe in the just happiness of your employees, mental health of your employees, or if your main focus is your bottom line. And that's always going to be a top focus because you don't have employees if you don't have a healthy bottom line. But this really does span the gamut in terms of relevance, I think.
I think so. You have to take care of your employees, and it doesn't mean that you have to go out and do their groceries for them and cook their dinners for them. But, there is a baseline that you should hit. And then a good employer will go beyond that baseline.
For sure. We've got a great comment here from Bob Mather. Thanks, Bob, for the comment about, he talks about, he says, I also agree that health is of utmost importance and that the employer should always be trying their very best to create a safe and healthy work environment. And you mentioned, that is a legal requirement. But again, I think that informs that productivity performance. So really, mental health is a business concern, more so now than probably ever.
I think so. We're in the middle of some really sad, frustrating times. I'm no different than anybody else. I've got the same struggles that everyone else has. So, just sort of speaking from the heart right now, rather than an HR person, understanding goes both ways. And I think, we have to, as an employee, we have to champion for our own mental health. And the employer can support that. And there's a variety of different ways you can support it. I mean, if you have a benefits program, sometimes you have an EAP program attached to that. That is an amazing resource. But if you're a small business owner, you may not have that. Because the cost of benefits and even the cost of an EAP can be, if it's not in your budget, it's not in your budget. But that doesn't stop you from going out and sourcing ideas for your employees. So in the toolkit, there's a variety of websites that you can share with your employees. Now, you don't want to go asking everybody, hey, does anybody need some resource
management or whatever.
Because we don't want to ask those questions. If the employee comes to us, absolutely fine. But as a business owner, you just want to make sure that, hey, if anybody is struggling, these are some great resources. I encourage everyone to take a look. If you have any questions, if there's anything else I can do, let me know.
So you mentioned a very common objection around health benefits and EAP budget, and that's reasonable, and that will absolutely shut down a conversation about getting these kinds of supports. But we're talking about access here, and I think one of the interesting challenges, like Payment Evolution, for example, we offer benefits for small businesses, and I think part of the challenge sometimes is people don't even know what they can access. So you don't even know if it is in your budget. You don't even know what you're missing in terms of pandemic planning. And that's really something we're super passionate about, is creating that access. Maybe that benefits plan is going to cost you less than raises, and give you so much more value, and your employees will be happier potentially, right? Really depending on your use case. But it is just very interesting to me that we ultimately take things off the table as an option before we even know if it's possible. And we're trying to remove that barrier. So, get a quick quote, get the pandemic planning toolkit. It's easy, it's turnkey. And then at least you have the information to decide how deep you want to go.
Absolutely. You don't know what you don't know. And I think it is really true. There are everybody has had to sort of move with the world. So, 25 years ago, there might only have been one solution.
Yes.
Now there are so many other solutions out there, and you just have to find out which one works for you. And if none of them work, then you find another solution.
Yes.
And I think that's true with, benefit rules can be a little more strict, but there's certainly a lot of things out there. It's a business too. So the benefit companies are becoming a little bit more flexible on what they will and won't offer as well. But they need more people asking questions and more people, forcing it. So they realize that there's more of a need out there, and the changes, hopefully will happen quicker. The same with HR. You don't know. We're in the middle of doing compliance audits right now with a lot of clients, and they're quickly finding out that, hey, they thought they were doing great in this area, and they were, but in focusing all in this area, they forgot this whole other large piece of legislation over here. So the compliance report, it's not a way to say, like, bad employer, you didn't do this. It's more of a tool to say, hey, obviously you've spent a lot of time in this area, and you're really good. It's now time to shift into this area, because this is your next area of risk. And I think that's where I think during these times, again, this is my personal opinion, I think the risk right now for employers is their employees' mental health. Where, statistically, coming into the holiday season, that's not a good time for a lot of people as well. We've got COVID, so we've got even more feelings of isolation. And, you want to prevent worst case scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. And isn't mental health the leading reason for absenteeism? I'm kind of pulling that out of memory, but this is like measurable impact. This isn't just a possibility?
Well, it's funny. When I first started working, I had a friend in the office that would say, "Oh, I'm taking a mental health day," and it was a joke, and it was a
Yeah,
big joke. We all say, "Yeah, Wednesday's a mental health day for me." Well, guess what? Now, when people are saying it, it's not a joke anymore.
yeah,
It is truly a mental health day. Now, whether you want to whether they're spending it, in bed, sleeping, or on the couch reading or doing yoga. Their tools for resiliency are different for everybody, but people are needing those days
yes.
to engage with those tools that they need now.
Yeah, I know my husband's workplace has instituted meetingless Wednesdays, and that's just a sort of another example to me of what is that mental health break? Because when you're back to back meetings 5 days a week, that alone can be stressful. So there's so many different kinds of accommodations, and sometimes they're better anyways, rather than kind of going with the flow and having your calendar. Um, Govern whatever the goal is that week, whatever the deliverable is, govern the way you operate as a business.
Mhm.
So I love that. We've talked about how we're creating access to necessary tools around legal obligations that businesses have, specific to the pandemic planning toolkit or pandemic planning period. Um, Now, I know that I don't know enough to speak about this intelligently, but I know that when a business has legal requirements, there's often like an employee number threshold that applies to what you need to what kinds of things you need to do when. So generally speaking, who needs this pandemic planning toolkit? If you're a company of 10, do you need it? But if you're a company of 3, you don't. Who should care about this conversation and this toolkit generally?
I honestly think everyone should. I think how you apply things will be different depending on how many employees you have. But the intent and the spirit of the pandemic plan, every business owner should read and understand. It's like anything. If you have 2 employees, I mean, you can be more casual with the, "Hey guys, your supplies are over here. Let me know if you're going to be sick," and everything else, as opposed to the person that's managing 50 plus employees. Then you have to be a little more strict and say, "Okay, now we need to really write things down,
Mhm.
so that everybody knows." You can't be as casual um, with when the numbers of employees go up, because you're not going to remember everything. One or
Totally.
two employees you probably could, but I think with the tool, it's still going to tell you everything that you need, because let's put it this way, the Ministry of Labor can walk into anybody's office, knock on
Yeah.
anybody's door.
Yes.
You can't lock them out. You can't say, "No, you're in violation of my visitors policy." You
Yeah.
can't do
Yeah.
that. Um, they can come in, and what are they going to see? They're going to look at your facility. They're I'm just kind of throwing you different things. It really depends on your industry and your number of employees, but they're going to look at your health and safety board. They might look at training records. They might say, "Hey, what are your COVID protocols?" Because guess what? I'm walking in right now and I'm talking to you, and neither one of us have our masks on.
Mhm, mhm.
You know, so they'll want to see those things. So they could say, "I want to see your policy. I want to see your training records that you trained all your staff on this."
Mhm.
There's it like the pandemic. These are things that business owners don't necessarily think about, but an HR person, we're not thinking about today. We're not thinking about tomorrow. We're also thinking about the what ifs, all the what if scenarios. So yeah, you know what? A lot of business owners are like, "Oh my gosh, we have to get them to sign off that we talked to them about this." Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because guess what? If we can't prove that you didn't have that conversation,
Mhm.
that could, set the outcome could be very different depending on the situation.
For sure. And that like very naturally segues to my next question around what are the risks of not planning for this second wave?
Um, Well, from an employee, I think it's really all about your employees right now. So you're going to get increased absenteeism. You're going, oh, mine don't look like that anymore.
Sorry, but you came over and I just had to.
Oh, of
Um,
course you did.
but we can keep talking risks. So definitely the absenteeism you mentioned. Did I hear that right? Was that the one
Yes,
that you mentioned?
absenteeism. So I think, you might get people that will take a day off here and there.
Mhm.
You're going to get people that might take a big block of time off. Remember, we've got the health screening tool now. It's mandatory to have the daily health screenings. So if you're going into an office, you have to fill out this form. Working remotely, not so much. But let's say your employee says, I'm not feeling well. And you're, as a company owner, you're like, well, you work from home anyway. So just, log in, watch the emails and everything. No, they don't need to. If they're legitimately sick, all the policies and they still maintain all their rights. Doesn't matter if they're in the office or working from home, everything still remains the same. So if they're sick, they don't need to do any work.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I got off topic. What was the?
So the question was about risks that a business is open to if they don't plan. Hmm.
So yeah, if they don't plan, then they're going to miss some critical things, and that would be the communicating to the employees. And the risk is, have you kept your employees safe? What if they refuse the work? Because you're going to want to address those types of things. I'm refusing the work because I feel it's unsafe.
Yes.
And you're like,
I
but I
need to keep the
haven't done
doors
it
open.
to make sure it was safe. I haven't told you how it's safe. I haven't done all of this. So
Yeah.
it stops a lot of pain.
Hmm. Yes. I like that. That is so darn accurate. I think about the fact that my son is live in school, like in person in school, and my son has some special needs. So I need flexibility from an employer, regardless of COVID. But if he was at home and we were doing online instruction, I would definitely need to sit by his side and support him with the education. And that's just, I'm sure that's probably true about any average kid. But then I think about, what if there's a COVID case in my son's classroom or in his school, and we have to self isolate for 2 weeks. And then we get right back, and a week and a half later, there's another case, and we have to self isolate again. What am I going to, what can I expect? What do I tell my employer? Do I say, oh, I'm out for 2 weeks? Am I allowed to say that? These are all very practical things that will pop up. And uh, flexibility is huge. You mentioned flexibility earlier, and it's definitely something that I very much value in an employer. But uh, but you do need that baseline. You need to actually think about it in advance, um, because man, oh man, will there be a lot of different circumstances, some that we can plan for and some that we can't. So, I just can't imagine not having anything in place or creating those responses in a reactive way. You could literally spend your every workday pandemic planning in a reactionary way.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't want to get to the point where you have a standard response that you're reading out to people like, oh, thank you for telling me that you're going to be off for 2 weeks and this is what we're going to do. However, you want to have a baseline of what you need to tell people. So you need to, what is the issue? What has their doctor or telehealth told them? Because right now, definitely we're going on trust.
Yeah.
We're trusting the employee to tell us exactly what telehealth said. We're trusting the employee because we're not getting doctor's notes. We're not getting
Yeah.
those things that we did in the old days. Um, so it's a lot of trust. It's
Yes.
definitely a lot of trust. And you need to come up with the parameters and work with that employee. Some jobs are more flexible and fluid than others. Like, if I had to self-isolate, I could still do my job. If
Yes.
I was showing no symptoms, but I had to self-isolate, nothing much would probably change for me. But other people that maybe have to be at work every day, because their job, they can't do their job at home or anywhere else, that's really where it's going to be impactful, because that employee, their income is on the line. And B, they're not doing the work. So can you pull employees from another spot to do their work, or can the work just not be done for 2 weeks? So, and the pandemic plan kind of leads you to all these scenarios, and it kind of forces you to plan as much as you can should these things happen.
Yes. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of this, and I want to talk about how do people get this pandemic planning toolkit. So it is a PDF, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it is something that they can implement on their own without a consultant holding their hand. Unless they want that help, they can get it. I know, but is it something? Essentially, are they just contacting us and we're going to hook them up? Are we? Essentially, what should a business do now? They've heard this call. They've heard us talk about this. I always love clear next steps. So let's talk clear. How do we get this into the hands of folks?
I believe you would think I would have this clarified.
That's okay. That's totally okay. I honestly just thought you were going to say, just contact us. I honestly thought you were going to say that. But yeah.
This is my practical side. I want to tell them where exactly to click.
Fair enough. Okay, well, I will say that as a result of the fact that we're doing this live session, we wanted to make this really accessible. So for the next week, and this is live right now, but we will be posting this video on a few different platforms as well. But for a week from the date of this broadcast, we are offering some incentives to get this into the hands of business owners. And we're going to do that in a very direct way. We're going to give you an email address, folks, and you're going to actually be emailing marketing@paymentevolution.com. And the reason why you're emailing marketing is because that is a bit of a smaller team, and we can easily get you in front of the right information. But essentially, we want this to be an accessible tool. So we're trying to make this as affordable as possible, and we're giving you an incentive. And we're telling you about this at the end of this session. If you made it to the end of this session, you should email marketing@paymentevolution.com, and we are going to make it worth your while. You gave us your eyeballs and attention and time, and we really appreciate that. And we're going to make sure that this pandemic planning toolkit is in your hands in a really accessible, turnkey way. So please email marketing@paymentevolution.com, and we're going to hook you up. And then after this week lapses, the tool is still absolutely available. You just might not be getting the same bonuses that you're getting within the next 7 days.
And myself and my colleagues at HX, we are available to discuss things for a fee, but we are available to discuss not even just the pandemic tool, everything and any pain that you're having right now with COVID, even before COVID, we can help you with anything. We want to take the burden off of you. If you just want to bounce an idea off, all about the flexible arrangements and, should I put it in writing? Should I not put it in writing? We always say put it in writing because you can pull it out with it. So HR does not like a lot of verbal conversations and agreements. We like everything written down. It's more protection for the business owner,
and clarity for the employee.
Yeah, and definitely clarity, because at the end of the day, if there's any question, you can always pull it out and say, look what we agreed to. So the piece of paper is very handy, but honestly, we are here. We know that there's a lot of pain right now, and we want to make sure that everybody gets through this, and their business. We want all the businesses to survive. We really do. So give us a call. If you've got an HR person or a junior person, we can help them as well. I've been doing HR for a long time. but I built up my network of HR colleagues that if I get something that's unfamiliar, or I just need a second opinion, or I need to bounce an idea off of, I reach out to my network. But a lot of standalone HR people don't have that, so they need that network. And we can certainly be that network for them and help them through. You know, they might be perfectly fine 90% of the time, but 10% of the time they just need a little additional support. And we can certainly do that as well. We're just here for everybody because, as I said, we don't want to see any businesses close.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Payment Evolution is like at our core, our why is empowering small and mid-sized businesses. That is an even stronger incentive today in a time where businesses are facing risks that they haven't before and having to navigate that. There will be over time, I'm just going to talk like openly to the audience here, over the next few months, and probably for a while, really, like we love to launch various programs and such, but you're going to see a bunch of new offerings from the HX team here at Payment Evolution launching, and we'll be sharing those through events like these and through social media, through our website and such. And while you can absolutely, and we encourage businesses to take advantage of some of our more standard plans where you get regular support. I want to just really call out specifically that you can even just buy an hour of time. You can prepare your questions in advance and speak to an expert, get all of your questions answered, and you can kind of have that a la carte approach if that's what you need. So really today we're talking about a pandemic planning toolkit that you can have in your hands today. We're talking about the a la carte help support approach when you need to talk to an expert, and we have monthly plans that will allow you to have that ongoing support. So let us know anything you need, and we'll make sure that we point you in the right direction. And also stay tuned because there will be lots of great launch items and promos. When we launch something new, we'll usually promote it with some incentives up front. I'm just taking a quick look at some of our comments to make sure that we have kind of addressed the things that came in terms of the questions that I have for you. As I quickly glance over that, I had one more. Do you have, if you had to give beyond email marketing at paymentevolution.com for the pandemic planning toolkit, do you have a piece of advice for small business owners as we go into the second wave, as we go into the fall here? Anything that you'd want to share from your HR perspective, little tidbit?
No, I think it's just keeping your, it's what we've already talked about, keeping your employees healthy. So that's talking about mental health. I think asking your employees as well, like survey your employees, ask them what they need, ask them what you did well, ask them what they're happy about what you've done. Because you know what, you need a pat on the back too. You need your employees to tell you that you've done a good job and you've taken care of them. So, that's absolutely fine. But then, the other side of the coin is, they're going to tell you what else they need from you, and that's okay too. It just opens up a dialogue. You might want to consider flu clinics.
That's great.
I think I was on the phone with Halton Health. Must have been about a month ago, and we were talking about the flu clinics. And I think the vaccine should be available roughly now. So you might want to, you certainly can't tell and force your employees to get them, but you might want to remind them that it is a resource, and you should maybe remind them to just have a good discussion with their doctor about it as well and see if it is something that is valid. Because let's face it, we don't just have COVID, we have regular flu, we have cold season, we have allergies. We have everything right now. And from my conversation with the nurse, the flu vaccine might allow the symptoms of COVID not to be sort of masked by the other symptoms. So, it's you have to weigh things out, right?
Yeah, for sure, for
So
sure. I like that though. I appreciate. I personally appreciate very specific, actionable things. So we've got a couple for our audience today. One, you want to email marketing at paymentevolution.com, and we're going to hook you up with the pandemic planning toolkit. And the other is have a conversation with your employees. See what it is they're thinking about, wondering about. Answer their questions. See what they need. Um, it's so easy to attend this session and watch this video and stop and go and talk to someone in your office, call someone up that's on your team, have a conversation, encourage them to get the flu vaccine. Um, and and ultimately out of those just organic conversations, you'll probably discover what are the priorities for your people. And then you also have a pandemic planning toolkit that at your disposal that can help you get there in a faster way. So I really appreciate all of your expertise, your insight, the little nuggets of advice that you've shared throughout this session. And I am personally really impressed that you put this document together. I mentioned this once to you before, but I'm really good in a stressful situation that hasn't been planned for. You know, you put me on the ground and I can see, you know, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that, we need to get this, we need to communicate that. But envisioning it all in advance is not a strength of mine, especially around something that I haven't experienced before. So I'm just really glad that there are folks like you with this expertise, with this strength that can build resources like this. So thank you, and thank you for all of that, for the work you do, and for being with us today.
well, this has been fun. I wasn't
Yeah,
expecting it to be fun, but it was.
I knew it. I knew it. And you've been a pleasure to talk to.
Oh,
You're
thank you too.
Yeah, you're knowledgeable and you're real. I'm always so grateful when people are just themselves. It's far more interesting than any performance we usually feel like we need to put on. So, yeah. So thank you for all of that, and I hope to have you back again.
Well, I did this first one. I will definitely come back again. It's been a
That's,
positive experience.
that's awesome. I'm honored. I'm honored. All right, Paula, thank you so much. I want to thank everyone who tuned in today. Anybody who's watching after the fact, please tweet us at any time at PayEvo, that's PAYEVO, for any topics that you want us to cover in these sessions. You can do that for our podcast. You can do that for our live sessions, for webinars. We are at your disposal. We literally are here to lift you up, to set your business up for success. Take advantage. Take advantage of us. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend, and we'll see y'all in about a week at about the same time, 2 p.m. Can't wait. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.